Hey guys, Buildzoid here, and today we're going to be taking a look at MSI's AM5 motherboard lineup. I've not looked at these yet, but I needed low-effort content today, or more like I felt like making some low-effort content today, and conveniently enough, MSI doesn't seem to have very many AM5 boards, so yeah, here we go. I'm just going to be sharing my thoughts on MSI's AM5 lineup. And I gotta say, like, the very low number of, like, SKUs is kinda, like, it makes sense, but at the same time, it's kind of surprising, because, like, motherboard manufacturers have this tendency to just make a motherboard, like, a different motherboard model for every, like, $10 increment. um, and yeah, MSI really doesn't seem to be doing that, as we have, what, 11 boards in total from them right now. Like, maybe they're gonna have more boards in the future, but I kind of doubt it, because the problem with the AM5 platform is just, like, the 7600X doesn't really make a ton of sense. The 7700X also doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. At least not at current pricing. Like, they're not bad CPUs, but I'd much like, especially if you're overclocking, I'd much rather have a 13600K. It's way more overclockable. It can run higher memory speeds. Like, yeah. Uh, or a 13700K, right? Again, same thing. It's more overclockable, does better memory speeds, cheaper motherboards. Um, and then there's and then you have, like, the 7900X and the 7950X, which are very expensive and basically workstation CPUs. Just not quite equipped with the, like, level of I/O that you'd expect from a workstation CPU, because for some reason, like, CPU manufacturers currently are hell-bent on just not giving anybody any PCIe lanes unless they go through the chipset, which is, like, that's not the same. Like, there are certain things that it's way better to have them connected directly to the CPU. Um, Luckily, MSI understands that, because I have had a look at some of their X670 boards at least, and MSI is actually one of the manufacturers that offers more options for getting, like, multiple PCIe slots wired directly to the CPU. Um, anyway, so yeah, because the Ryzen CPU lineup right now kind of like, it kind of sucks. It makes sense that MSI doesn't have a ton of boards. Like, the 7950X is a really great CPU. Um, and arguably the same is true for the 7900X, but the ones below that is just kind of like, yeah, I'm not really sure why you'd want to get those right now. Um, anyway, let's get into it. Starting off with the X670E Godlike. This board's $1,300. Like, I like how it looks. I don't like the price. It's the feature set like? Well, you do get kind of everything, right? 10 gig, 2.5 gig, smart button. Oh, I guess MSI now has, like, a rebindable button. I wonder if MSI figured out how to get Safe Boot working, because Asus didn't, Gigabyte didn't. I have a sneaking suspicion ASRock hasn't even attempted it, which, fair enough. As far as I know, you can't really have a proper Safe Boot function on AMD motherboards, because the AMD AGSA just the startup sequence of Ryzen boards is just horrible as far as I'm concerned. And also, it doesn't allow for safe boot functions to work properly, which makes memory overclocking on Ryzen systems so painful compared to, like, Intel systems. So very painful. Like, you don't have as many memory settings, so like, in theory, it should take less time, because there's less memory settings that you can change. In practice, it takes significantly more time, because if you screw up, it takes forever to recover, because you need to clear the CMOS, and then you need to wait for the memory to retrain. And yeah, like, the first boot after it clears CMOS just freaking sucks. And you do that a lot if you're pushing the memory to its limits, because Safe Boot doesn't work on Ryzen, thanks to AMD. So anyway, yeah, we've got all of the buttons. You get 2 Type-C ports. There's not really that much Type-A back here, which I'm a bit disappointed by. Wi-Fi 6E, you get your optical out. So yeah, I'm not a fan of how few USB Type-A ports there are. Like, it feels like they could have shifted these buttons more towards, to the side and added another stack of like 3 USB Type A's and a Type C instead of having this like vertical one. I really don't know why they're doing that. Like, the board is wide AF. Like, this board is so EATX. It's ridiculous. Like, it's approaching that. Like, there's that server motherboard form factor that's like really, really wide ATX, where you get like an extra set of screw holes. Like, I'm pretty sure this board is almost at that width. Like, it's almost there. So I have no idea how they couldn't find the space for like an extra stack of USB ports. They could have even had an extra USB Type C with that. Like, yeah. But anyway, yeah, so I'm not particular, like, it's not a bad rear IO, right? Like, you get your 10 gig, you get your 2.5 gig, you get your fast Type Cs, but I am surprised that it's like not that dense compared to some of the other high-end boards. Like, some of the other high-end boards are just completely packed with ports, and this isn't. So yeah, that's a bit surprising. Then again, like, there's other, like, I think it's the X570 Godlike, where you literally get 4 USB Type A ports in the rear IO. So yeah, I guess it's a bit of a tradition for Godlike boards to not pack that much rear IO compared to the competition. Anyway, talking about the VRM on a board like this is just utterly pointless. Though I do wonder if MSI has like how good MSI's like LLC tuning is compared to some of the other manufacturers. Because some of the boards I've tested, not great, and I've heard horrible things about some other boards as well that I haven't tested. So I don't know if that's actually the case. But like I've heard some kind of concerning things about voltage settings on some boards for Ryzen, but yeah, without testing it myself, I don't know about that. So I do kind of wonder about like how MSI's LLC is set up, though. That is generally like MSI is actually pretty good about having relatively consistent like VRM configurations across their motherboard lineup. Like, your LLCs are not going to entirely be exactly the same on every single board because the VRM designs are slightly different. But you don't, like, in my experience, it's very rare that you get an MSI board, like it's very rare that you have like drastic performance differences from one MSI board to another MSI board. So, yeah. Anyway, the VRM on this is just so overkill that it just doesn't matter for any like the 7950X just doesn't pull any power because it just hits the thermal limit before it really pulls any concerning amount of power. So it's just, yeah, it's not a very difficult CPU in terms of power delivery. We'll actually move on to let's take a look at the specs. So we got 884 support, which I like. It's all from the CPU, which is cool. That's really cool. You got 4 M.2 slots, which is not that many considering how massive this board is. Like, this thing is so wide, and they managed to only get 4 M.2 slots on there. Oh, I guess yeah, you get the M.2 expansion card. So I guess that explains why they didn't really try to stuff that many M.2s onto the board itself. You get 8 SATA ports, which is kind of rare on X670 these days. You get your Marvell 10 gig and your Intel 2.5. Wait, AMD Wi-Fi 6E. AMD makes Wi-Fi? I thought that was Intel. Well, anyway, you get Wi-Fi 6E from AMD apparently. This is a pretty normal high-end motherboard. I think, if I'm not mistaken, this has a 10-layer PCB, which unfortunately doesn't do anything because Ryzen's memory controller brick walls at well, depending on how lucky you get, it basically, like, if you get unlucky, your CPU will probably max out at like 6300. Or it's not even unlucky, but like basically the memory controller variance on Ryzen is like 6200. should sort of be worst case scenario, and best case scenario, it's like 6,500. And yeah, that doesn't really require anything all that special from the motherboard, so yeah. Oh, and you also have the right angle 24 pin. So man, this board in terms of case compatibility has to be a nightmare because once you put that 24 pin at a right angle, it's going to be even wider. Um, but yeah, anyway, let's keep scrolling through. Do they not mention that this is a 10-layer PCB somewhere? Oh yeah, they do. 10-layer PCB. Like that does add like the higher layer count PCBs are like like they're quite expensive, but they're not $1,300 expensive. Like you can get 10-layer boards at like $500, and so yeah, this like this the main problem with this board is the price. Like this is just insane. Like $1,300. I don't see anything that immediately, you know, makes me think, oh yeah, this should be $1,300. Um, 24 plus 2 plus 1 VRM. Uh, Wait, did they actually get a 24 phase controller? Like this whole like advanced SMT process, like SMT DIMM slots and PCIe slots, like those are just standard now because PCIe Gen 5 has insane signaling integrity requirements, and through-hole PCIe slots don't meet those. And then you've got your DIMM slots, which actually you can get through-hole DDR5 slots, but they're not ideal if you want to be pushing high memory speeds. So, yeah. MSI claims up to 6666. I think we're going to have to take a look at the QVL for this. Oh, there it is. Wait. Oh. Is that a real skew? Because, oh, go away. I don't think it is. Like this is a thing with motherboard manufacturers sometimes is they'll have like a special engineering sample memory kit made for a board just so that they can get some crazy speed onto the QVL. Hynix A die. Okay, I wonder if I don't think there's like I don't think Ryzen memory controllers do speeds this high. So, oh. Then again, like I've not tried Hynix A die with my 7950X because it's kind of pointless. Unfortunately, like A die is easier to clock high than M die is, but it does worse timings. So if you're stuck at around, you know, mid 6,000, like low to mid or even like even at 7,000 megabits per second, M die has a timing advantage. Like A die needs to be hitting like 72, 74, 7600 to make sense. And 6600 is not that. So yeah, but it's interesting that we have a QVL that actually goes up to 6600. Anyway, let's move on to the Ace, which is very slight. Like, it depends on what feature set we get. Depends on what feature set. Gallery, better rear I/O. You get more USB Type A. You get more Type Cs, more Type A. You still get your 10 gig LAN. You get your Wi-Fi 6E. I mean, you don't get the 2.5 gig, so you get single LAN instead of dual. Same audio loadout. You have a post code, power button, reset button. Also, quite an EATX board here. VRM will have no problem powering any CPU that you can, put into the socket because Ryzen just doesn't pull that much power. And it looks like we have that same 884 PCIe configuration. Yep, which is cool. Like, I'm a big fan of that. And they have the M.2 add-in card again. Yeah, so... And you still get 4 M.2 slots on the board itself. And 6 SATA ports. So, yeah, this is a way... Like, I don't get why you would get the Godlike. Let's check out the QVL for memory. Hey, look, it's the same max speed. So I don't think that 10-layer PCB is doing much of anything. Which, like, I'd basically expect that. Like, fun fact, like, 13th gen can do over 7,000, like, can easily do over 7,000 on an 8-layer PCB. So, on the God, I'm not sure what they're doing with the extra 2 layers. Like, it might just be to enable some connectivity stuff, but it's like that board doesn't really seem to have, like, the Ace basically has all the same features. So, except it's like half the price. So I don't, like, yeah, I just don't understand why the Godlike is $1,300. Like, it's like it looks better than the Ace. It looks significantly better than the Ace board. I will give it that. But the price doesn't make any sense because it doesn't really do anything that the Ace doesn't already do anyway. Yeah, we've got 22 90 amp smart power stages, which is just like, Literally, like, I've already done a video with a freaking $300 X670 motherboard with no VRM heatsinks. Running Prime 95. It's fine. It doesn't matter. You don't need you really don't need much in the way of power delivery for Ryzen 7000. It just doesn't pull that much current. Yeah, we got an 8-layer PCB, easy OC tuning. Okay, so yeah, MSI has the same kind of like or this seems a bit different implementation, but yeah, they have the same kind of like advanced overclocking functionality added to the board. I do like the fact that they have all the PCIe slots configured the way they do. I think that's really cool. That's not super common on X670 boards, and I really wish it was. But yeah, like I wish this board was less ugly, but but in terms of actual feature set, it's still very expensive, and I guess we need to see the carbon. So let's take a look at the carbon, and I think the carbon looks fine. Looks better than the Ace at least. So let's see, what does this do in terms of features? Actually, let's just start with the gallery. So you get slightly slower USB ports, but same amount. Still, you get 2.5 gig LAN instead of 10 gig. And 10 gig LAN is actually kind of expensive as like an add-on card. So, spending like $100 extra on a motherboard to get the 10 gig built in isn't completely insane because if we look at like wired networking cards, and let's say you want single 10 gig, yeah, like, if the board's $100 extra and you get 10 gig, yeah, that makes sense because otherwise you'd literally be using a PCIe slot and spending $100 to get the same functionality. So, yeah. Though, like, obviously this is 700 versus 500, so it's like a $200 price jump, but the thing is, like, you do get some other, like, you get the 2.5 gig. What else do you get? I mean, this still has a postcode. Yeah, this still has a postcode. You still get 6 SATA ports. VRM will power any CPU that you can put into the board. Am I right about that? Almost certainly, right? Yeah, 18 power stages. It's it's gonna be fine. 8-layer PCB. Yep, that's just standard on X670. Oh, you don't get. I don't think this board does the 844 thing, does it? This just does 88. Yeah, you just get 88, and then 4 from the chipset instead of 4 from the CPU. And that actually is like a pretty substantial price. Like that actually makes quite a difference to the price because the less PCIe Gen 5 is very expensive. So the less PCIe Gen 5 you have running throughout your board, the cheaper it gets. And if you have no Gen 5, it's way, way cheaper. So, yeah. But ultimately, yeah, so I like the carbon. I do like the carbon. Like, this is a really solid mix of features, in my opinion. Also, let's check out that QVL. Oh, this one doesn't do 6666. Then again, I'm not like I'm pretty sure that 6666 memory kit is a special SKU. So maybe MSI just decided not to use it on their lower end boards to sort of stat pad the higher end ones. Anyway, you also get 4 M.2 slots. You don't get yeah, it looks like you don't get the M.2 add-on card. So yeah, okay. So the Ace, like the Ace makes sense because like you get the like if you need the PCIe layout that the Ace has, then there's that benefit. If you want the 10 gig, the Ace has that benefit. You also get the M.2 add-on card. That adds some costs. So I don't think the like $200 price gap between this and this is unreasonable. And the $500 price for the carbon, like in terms of feature set, this is comparable to other $500 boards on X670. And as all round like a motherboard in terms of feature set, like this already does kind of everything I'd want a motherboard to do. At this price point, you know, it might be nice to have, like, I think there might be one board that does 10 gig at this price point, but that board doesn't do the PCIe, the dual X8 PCIe slots. So, yeah, it depends what you're looking for, but I like the feature set on this. You get your postcode, a VRM that'll power any CPU you can put into the board. The rear I/O looks good. I mean, it's not exactly, like, this is a good note. Like, it's 8 Type A ports, so yeah, I'm not going to complain about that. Like, I think there are boards that have significantly more, but, like, you know, like, at that point, we're talking about, like, what do you prefer? Do you want more USB Type A ports in the back? Or do you want dual X8? Or do you want 10 gig LAN, right? Like, we start getting into the point of, like, pick and choose what you want the board to do. Yeah, but like this to me seems like a really solid feature set for a $500 board. Yeah, so I like the carbon. What else do we have? We have the Dash P. No postcode on this, which is quite upsetting. We do have 2 metal PCIe slots. Does that mean we have dual XA? We have X16, X4 from the CPU, which is still better than, like, arguably better than nothing, but well, no, like, the thing is, when you have the X8 option, like, you can do, like, that's just more flexible. No, this isn't bad, so I'm not gonna complain about it. You still get 4 M.2 slots. Still the same memory support because it's an 8-layer PCB. I'm sure the VRM can power a 7950X. Can it? Yes, it can. It might, like, this board actually, this is what, 300? Yeah, this is, oh, yeah, actually it's under $300. It's $290. Yeah, this should actually, this might even have a slightly better, like, this might have slightly better voltage regulation than some of the other motherboards in this price range. It could also be worse, but yeah, like, like, that is one of those things that you actually have to measure, but, yeah, like with Ryzen, if you're, and the thing is, the voltage regulation only is a concern if you're doing static overclocking. If you're just using PBO, it doesn't matter because the default load line configuration for Ryzen CPUs with their dynamic boost is really aggressive, and that's actually where some of the issues on static voltage come from, is that you basically, like, when you switch over from auto voltage to static voltage, you actually need to add a bunch of V-droop on top of what AMD like normally has, because by default there isn't much V-droop, and that causes the like static voltage regulation to be really, really terrible on some motherboards. Yeah, so I don't know how good it is on this board, but it could be good, it could be bad. Well, it could be about the same as some of the other boards, I guess. It's not going to, I don't think it'll be significantly worse, because there are some pretty bad boards out there. Like, I think it would be pretty hard for this to be the absolute worst. So yeah, like the VRM, like VRM wise though, this board really doesn't raise any concerns. Not any concerns that I wouldn't have about other motherboards, which is mostly just the voltage regulation. Thermally, this will have no problem powering a 7950X. And if you're not doing static overclocking, then the voltage regulation doesn't even affect you. I don't like the fact that there's only 6 Type A USB ports over here, though. Yeah, I'm not a fan of that. Like, yeah, you get 2 Type Cs, but I would have much rather seen 7 Type A's. Like, 7 is like what I consider the bare minimum for Type A USB ports. You get BIOS flashback, but that's standard on AM5 motherboards now. Up to 6600, so yeah, same memory speed support. 4 M.2 slots. What did I want to check? 2.5 gig LAN from, I'm guessing, Realtek? Yeah, Realtek. So, like, yeah, it's a $290 motherboard, but for your $700 CPU, it's a perfectly good fit. Or wait, no, $650 CPU, like, it's a perfectly good fit. As far as motherboards go. So yeah, I don't really have a problem with this. Like, it's not a bad board, right? And it does have an 8-layer PCB, and those are quite expensive. So yeah, anyway, let's move on to the B650 boards, starting off with the Carbon Wi-Fi. And this doesn't have a postcode, and I already don't like it. It does have troubleshooting LEDs, and the Dash P also had troubleshooting LEDs, and MSI does have color-coded troubleshooting LEDs now. So you don't have to, like, you're not going to be in that situation where blindingly bright white, was it MS? I think MSI actually used white LEDs on a bunch of their boards. So you get this blindingly bright white LED that would light up, indicating that there's some kind of error, except it would be impossible to tell what error the LED is indicating because the label for the LED is right next to it, and you can't read it because it's blindingly bright. So now they're color coded, which makes it a lot easier to figure out what went wrong without, having to like cover up the LED to read the inscription next to read the silk screening next to it and then uncover it. So yeah. Anyway, I'm gonna guess that the VRM on this is actually better. Yep, it's a bit better than on the low end X67 TE board. Duet rail power system, so they're shoving 2 power stages into each phase. This works just fine. Like, there are very diminishing returns with packing more phases into the VRM past like 8 phases. So I have no complaints for this. Actually, it's even past like 6 phases, you get very diminishing returns. So, yeah, I don't see any issue with this. Memory up to 6600 plus. Yep, so we still have the same memory topology, which makes sense because this is on an 8-layer PCB, isn't it? Wait, this is a 6-layer. What? Isn't this like $300? It is. That is really interesting. When did that appear? Oh, wait, no, I'm on the X670 carbon. Oops. How did I get there? Compatibility, memory. Oh, it is worse. Yeah, because 6-layer PCB. And yet they claim 6600. Like, what? Actually, no, like this is a photo of the carbon and they put 6600 over the dim slots. Like this is misleading. This is not okay. Like, yeah, that is not okay. It's okay. So this has a 6-layer PCB. The QVL looks like what I'd expect from a 6-layer PCB, as in it stops at 6000, which is actually a bit worse than what I'd expect from a 6-layer. I would have expected like 6200. But yeah, so I don't like this. Cuz like this has a better memory topology. This doesn't have a postcode. Even if it had a postcode, it's just worse at memory overclocking. So like, what's the postcode going to do for you? It's like, oh yeah, I can see that the motherboard is having trouble training the memory, but you know, there's nothing I can do about the fact that it's having memory training issues because it's a 6-layer PCB and it's just worse at memory overclocking. Um, so yeah, I don't like this. Um, It's very, like, it's an expensive B650 board, but... Because, like, I'm pretty sure that other manufacturers have $300 B650 boards that have 8-layer PCBs. In fact, I'm pretty sure there are B650 boards at, like, $250 with 8-layer PCBs. And yet, here they still claim 6600 plus. So I wonder if the QVL, maybe the QVL isn't finished, but, like, I would really not be surprised if this being on a 6-layer PCB did actually limit it to 6000. And the thing is, like, you know what? Let's grab one of the kits from the X670 board that's QVL'd for like 6400. Let's go with this. Oh wait, no, that's not a G-Skill kit. Okay, we have a G-Skill kit. The reason I want a G-Skill kit is because G-Skill has motherboard QVLs on their website. So it's like if the... Like, I don't know, maybe it's not completely up to date, but... There's no AMD boards on this list, so that's not great. Yeah, like G-Skill has really detailed QVLs for motherboards on their own website. Most of the other manufacturers will have like, oh, we support, like Corsair generally just goes like, oh, we support these chipsets. And G.Skill doesn't have anything rated over 6,000 for Ryzen. Oh, come on. Well, okay, so the QVL doesn't say 6600. The PCB is a 6-layer. I have serious doubts about these, like this part of the memory support spec here. Yeah, I have serious doubts about that. I could be entirely wrong. Like there's no rule saying that like a 6-layer PCB couldn't be good at memory overclocking. It's just that my general experience with DDR5 motherboards has been if it has less than 8 layers, it's probably not good at memory overclocking. So the fact that like the QVL for this board doesn't have anything on it above 6,000 and it's a 6-layer PCB makes me think that maybe they got a little bit too excited with copy-pasting their memory support claims from some of the other boards, right? Because, like, basically all of their boards are, like, 6,600 plus. But this is the first board we've seen where the QVL does not have anything rated for 6,600. Anyway, so yeah, I don't really like the Carbon very much. Also, how's the rear I/O on this? The rear I/O is actually quite nice, but it's $300. And if the memory QVL is to be believed, I'd much rather have the X670 board at this price, right? Like, I'd much rather have the X670-P Wi-Fi instead of the Carbon. So anyway, let's take a look at the Edge. So the Edge is obviously not going to be an 8-layer PCB either because, like, we already saw one 6-layer board. So yeah, that's another 6-layer board. 14 power stages. This is still going to be plenty for powering a 7950X. That's not going to be an issue whatsoever. What's the price on this? This $279. Man, that is not much of a price drop. And it's not like we get a postcode or anything, do we? Nope, no postcode. You get your 6 SATA ports. You don't, like, PCIe layout is, I'm guessing, worse than the X670E board. $6,600 plus again. Yeah, worse PCIe layout than the X670E board. That's like $10 more. Rear I/O looks nice. There's a lot of USB Type A, but yeah, I'm not a fan. Like, this really isn't that much cheaper, right? And let's see if the QVL for this looks any better. Maybe it's just the Carbon where the QVL is a bit like incomplete. Nope. No, this also doesn't go above 6,000 apparently. Which doesn't surprise me, because it would be the same daisy chain topology as the Carbon Wi-Fi. So, so far the B650 boards from MSI have been quite disappointing. Let's see, B650i Edge Wi-Fi, ITX, here we go. Let's just go to the specification. Actually, you know what, let's go to the specification. So apparently 66, no, let's scroll through the overview. So, the power solution, 8 V-core phases, 80 amp smart power stages. Does this have a fan? It does have a fan. Okay, it should be fine. Assuming that fan is actually set up to cool the VRM, it should be fine. Got a 10-layer PCB. The thing with the really high layer counts on ITX boards is that they're not, like, on an ATX board when you have a high layer count, it generally goes, like, straight into memory, like, a lot, like you'll get benefits in like memory overclocking, that kind of thing, potentially. But with ITX boards, sometimes the high layer count is just required to support like basic features, and the memory overclocking isn't necessarily going to be improved. But yeah, and this is the CPU to DIMM slot layout is a bit weird on this board. Like the CPU socket is really high up on the board. So, well, let's just check out the QVL. Also, what's the price on that thing? Oh, we don't have a price? Oh, that sucks. Oh, 229. Oh, you know what? If this board is, if at 230 it's not good at memory overclocking, I think that's acceptable. Yeah, if you're just building, and even then I think you could probably run a 7950X on this. Yeah, like, depending on what kind of ITX build you're putting together, like, you might not have enough cooling for your CPU anyway. Oh, yep, the QVL sucks again. Yeah, so this is one of those ITX boards where features took priority. Oh, well, the extra layer count isn't there to boost memory overclocking performance. The extra layer count is there to just get a functional board with the feature set that it has. So actually, let's see what kind of features we get. Get a clear CMOS button and a BIOS flashback button. 5 Type A ports. That's not great. And you only get you get reduced audio, no optical out, Wi-Fi 6E, 2.5 gig LAN. The thing is, I think this might be the cheapest B650 ITX board. Right? Yeah, because the other ones are you've got the 2 Asus Strix boards, which we already know those ain't gonna be cheap. There's the ASRock B650 Phantom Gaming, which is 290. So as a budget ITX option, like this is nice as like like oh, and they even managed to squeeze some troubleshooting LEDs onto it. So yeah, for the price, I don't hate it. Like the thing is, yeah, compared to like an ATX board, this looks kind of terrible for $230, but it's an ITX board. ITX boards are inherently more expensive than ATX boards because there's just not enough space to use cheaper components. So, or like, well, you end up with extra costs like, oh, we needed to add 2 PCB layers because there's not enough space. We need to use more expensive capacitors because there's not enough space. You need to use, well, that's actually kind of it. Looking at this that I can see, but yeah, ITX boards just also they're relatively low volume, which also doesn't help the price for ITX boards. So, yeah, on one hand, I'm a bit disappointed by, what this is. On the other hand, it's also like it's as far as I can tell, it's the cheapest ITX board for AM5. So, you know, I guess like I'm not too disappointed. And still, this is a motherboard that I'd be kind of interested to test though. Partially to see if the memory overclocking really is as bad as it looks like it might be, and partially to see if the VRM can handle a 7950X. Like, it should be doable. Maybe not completely passive, but it should be doable. Like, the 7950X really doesn't pull that much current. And actually, if you're on the stock, power settings, the CPU has a 160 amp current limit. So, that's just 20 amps per power stage on this 8-phase VRM, which really, like, that shouldn't be that hard to deal with for 80 amp smart power stages. So, Yeah. It is a bit of a, like it's an ITX board, and it's not a insanely expensive ITX board. So, um yeah, I think like I don't hate it. There. I'll put it that way. I don't hate it. I'm a bit disappointed with the fact that this says 6600 when the QVL tops out at 6000. But this looks like if you just want a basic ITX build, this seems like a, or well, basic. Like if you're building an ITX system with a 7950X and you don't need a ton of connectivity or something, like this will do just fine, especially if you're not pushing the memory too hard. Anyway, let's move on to the next board, the B650 Tomahawk. How much does this cost? That is the question. It costs $250. That's kind of a lot. Same VRM as the Edge, same 6-layer PCB as the Edge. I've just noticed that MSI is actually specifying what PCB material they use, which is kind of neat. AT170. Oh, wait, so they like downgraded the... Oops, I did the grouping thing. No, I don't... Oh, now it's doing it again. Why? Stop. There we go. IT170 versus IT150GS. I'd have to look up the differences between those. Wait, I'm guessing this is a PCIe Gen 4 motherboard, isn't it? Yeah, this is Gen 4, and... Wait, this is also Gen 4. Why does this have the better PCB material, then? Like, what's the point if you're not gonna have... Oh, wait, there's a Gen 5 M.2, and this has a Gen 4 M.2. Man, that's ridiculous. That's actually ridiculous. Well, I guess they don't have enough layers for a full Gen 5 X16 slot. So they only ran the Gen 5 to the M.2 slot because you can actually fit that. Okay. Well then, what's the rear I/O like? It's good. I don't really have anything to complain about there. So yeah, power, like VRM wise, this is plenty for a 7950X. I'm kind of disappointed that this is a 6-layer PCB because there's a lot of like 8-layer, like there's a, like doesn't ASRock go all the way down to like $200 before they stop using 8-layer PCBs? Like off the top of my head, that seems correct. So, and I think Gigabyte is the same, where they have like 8-layer PCBs all the way down to like 220 or something. So yeah, I'm surprised that MSI is like doing relatively expensive 6-layer boards. You get 6 SATA ports on this. So this doesn't really seem like... This doesn't seem like a particularly good option at the price. Like, you know what? Actually, I'm just going to very quickly uncheck MSI. You have like the Aorus Pro AX. You have the Tough from Asus. Got the Riptide from ASRock. Yeah, I think 250 might be a bit much. I mean, I don't, off the top of my, like, I want to say this is an 8-layer PCB. So you know what? Let's just look it up. Yeah, this is an 8-layer PCB. Yeah, that's the thing. And I think even the Riptide is. Because, like, ASRock does, like... Or even the Lightning. And that's actually an X670E board. And then you have, like, the B650E Riptide Wi-Fi, which the Tomahawk does this. This has Wi-Fi, right? Yeah, it does have Wi-Fi. Okay. Specs. Oh, wait, they don't mention how many layers this has. Wait, do they not mention? No, 8-layer PCB again, yeah. 60 amps more power stages, but that doesn't, like, 60, 70, 80, 90 amp parts, kind of the same thing in many scenarios. Yeah, man, like, MSI, I feel like kind of feels like they've dropped the ball a bit with their AM5 lineup compared to, like, their AM4 motherboards, because they had some amazing AM4 boards, and for AM5, it's like, I like the carbon a lot. The X670E carbon looks great. The X670-P also looks like a good option, but the B650 boards are like they're kind of disappointing. Now, obviously, I'm basing a lot of this off of the fact that MSI's QVL stops at 6,000 and the PCB layer count is 6 layers. But, like, right now, I'm not seeing anything particularly confidence-inspiring on MSI's own website. And that's, that's concerning. Okay, so we got the V650M Mortar Wi-Fi, which power 12, it'll power your 7950X. 6-layer PCB again. You do get troubleshooting LEDs on this. Yeah, they squeezed 6 SATA ports on here, though you're never gonna... Well, actually, no, you are able to... You can use the right angle SATA cables on those two. Memory support, 6400 apparently. Really? What am I going to see in this QVL over here? I don't see any 6400. I don't even see 6200 in this QVL. So, like, I don't know. Maybe they need to, like, finish off their QVLs, or, like, these boards aren't that great. Like, are worse than what the overview pages show. Got 7 Type A ports, USB Type C, Wi-Fi 6E, 2.5 gig LAN. The rear I/O is not bad. I don't really see anything particularly wrong with that. What's the price on this? Am I about to be extremely disappointed? There it is. It's $230. Hmm. I guess it could be worse. Yeah, I'm not a fan of this. Really, yeah. Really not. Then again, like, the lowest price for B650 boards in general is like a little under $200 currently. But even then, $230 for this seems... Like, this isn't that different from, like, a B550 MATX board. Right? Because it doesn't have any PCIe Gen 5 on it. Like, yeah, the LGA socket is more expensive than the PGA socket was, but... Like, if this was a B550 board, I would expect it to be, like, I don't know, 180 or something. Then again... What other MATX options are there? There's not many, is there? You've got the Gene, the B650... And this is down at 190. And that doesn't look like... I've not looked at that board in detail, but that doesn't look like immediately terrible, so... Okay, wait. Also, what I'm wondering now is, like, how similar is the mortar to the Dash A? Because it might be kind of the same board. Six-layer PCB, but they won't tell us what VRM this has, though I have a sneaking suspicion it's the same VRM as the mortar. Because it looks the same, doesn't it? Actually, you know what? There's an easy way to check this. We can just go to the gallery part. Up. Up. Oh, it's actually quite different. Is it? Yeah. Like, obviously the capacitors got shuffled around, but what I'm trying to figure out is how many inductors are hiding under the heat sinks. It kind of looks like they moved some of the inductors around a bit. So what's annoying is they won't tell us what the VRM on this is. And I bet the QVL for this looks exactly the same, doesn't it? Yep. So I guess, like, the only real difference is that you lose some... Oh, you lose your Type-C port. Okay. You lose... I think you lose some VRM performance. I'm not sure if it's a relevant amount of VRM performance. I don't know what's under those heat sinks. The heat sinks themselves look perfectly acceptable. These look like perfectly good passive VRM heat sinks, so I'm not going to complain about those. You do lose 2 SATA ports. This is a 4 SATA port board, whereas this is a 6. I guess maybe it's not that bad at 230. I guess this is sort of the main competitor to it. To the mortar. This only has 4 SATA ports, so if you care about SATA ports, this does kind of suck. And the rear I/O on this isn't really any better. Actually, arguably worse. You lose your optical. Wait, does this have? Yeah, this has the optical output. Though this is 7 Type A versus the Asus has also 7. Yeah, so they're roughly about the same, aren't they? I guess I might have been a bit too harsh at initial impressions, though I do believe this is on an 8-layer PCB. I'd have to look that up. Well, you know what? Let's do that. I'm interested. And we're not even going to look up the PCB. What I want to see is the QVL. Where is it? Memory support 6400. Yeah, I'm going to go and say this is probably an 8-layer PCB. Man, the website is so annoying to navigate. Why do they do this? Yeah, we have driver MOSFETs, power connectors, memory and storage. Huh, they don't mention the layer count. Or at least I can't find it right now. So maybe it's a 6-layer? I can't tell. Yeah, okay, well, I don't know. But at least the QVL for this is a lot more confidence-inspiring. Um, okay, so I think you'd actually need to like test these two against each other. Um, so I take it back. That 230, it's not that insanely expensive, but I'm not really a big fan of that board. Let's check out the Dash P B650. So we've got 6 SATA ports. We've got some troubleshooting LEDs, of course. What's the VRM like? They're not going to tell us, are they? Oh, wait, they will. It's 12 power stages of 12 75 amp smart power. Are they smart? Probably. Yeah, I think this is a monolithic 75 amps. I really think this is going to be monolithic power systems. So, yeah, it even says smart power stage. I don't know why I don't read. PCB 6-layer, of course. Memory support, again with the 6400 that I am sure is not on the QVL again. Yep, not on the QVL. This PCIe slot layout is not incredible. See how those are configured, but at a glance that looks 16141. Yeah, no, I think it should have been 16114. Like you want to get your useful PCIe slots as far away from each other as possible so that like you don't have a networking card choking off a GPU or something. It's not like it really affects the thermals much, but it can sometimes lead to like a really like significant noise increase when you put a like any kind of add-on card in front of a fan. Like yeah, the airflow restriction can cause some pretty annoying, like it can significantly increase the noise output. So yeah, like your X4 slot should ideally be as far away from your X16 as possible. It's not like you're going to do a multi-GPU setup with an X16 and an X4, right? Like it makes sense to have the slots closer together if it's for multi-GPU. So when you have like an X8 and an X8, there's like an optimum distance to, for like your NVLink bridges, that kind of thing, if you're building a rendering system or something. But if you're not doing that, like your secondary PCIe slot should be basically as far away from the GPU PCIe slot as possible. And this isn't that. What else do we get? Rear I/O looks good, right? 7 Type A's. You get your BIOS flashback, 2.5 gig LAN. You even get Wi-Fi 6E. So, I think this board is like, what price is it? It's $220. I think I prefer it to the Tomahawk. Yeah, it's not like the Tomahawk has like better PCIe. Oh, wait, no, you get a lot more rear I/O. So, I don't know. Like, I feel like a lot of these MSI boards are very situational, where it's like really depends on what you want your motherboard to do, and then choose the one. My overall picks would be like Ace, Carbon, Dash P, and the ITX board. Like, if you want a budget ITX board, this exists, and it's kind of the only option, unless BioStar has something. Then there's the Dash P Wi-Fi on X670, which at $290, like that is a really solid feature set on that. Except for the USB ports. There's not many of those, unfortunately, but yeah, you don't get a lot of Type A. But in terms of like internal connectors, this is actually quite nice. So yeah, if you want like internal expansion options, then that's great. And also you can just add USB ports with from like internal connectors. Though I don't think there's that many internal USB port headers, is there? Actually, no, you get like 2 down here, you get a 3.0 over here. I think that's another 3.0 over there. So yeah, if you like the USB situation on this motherboard can be solved for like a reasonable price. Like obviously if you don't really need the extra connectors of this board, then you could get one of the B650s instead, but like this has good memory support. It has troubleshooting LEDs. It's not like you can get a B650 from MSI that has a postcode, right? So it's really just kind of like, well, you can get a B650 that's slightly cheaper and has more USB ports, but probably is worse at memory overclocking. Doesn't really have a notably better VRM or anything. Has worse PCIe layout. Has the same or lower number of M.2 slots. Actually, I think it's the same all the way through. So, yeah, this is a cool board. Like the feature set on this is pretty interesting. I think it might be a bit expensive. I feel like off the top of my head, I want to say there's a board offering a similar PCIe slot layout that's not. Oh wait, no, I think that's the live mixer from ASRock, and that only has 2 SATA ports. So that has completely different issues. But yeah, so this is a like I think this is like an interesting board from MSI. The carbon is just straight up good. This sort of does everything that I would want my X670 motherboard to do, right? It's got a postcode, it's got your 6 SATA ports, it does dual X8, it's got your 4 M.2 slots, the rear I/O has plenty of USB Type A, you get 2 Type Cs, you get your 2.5 gig LAN, you get your Wi-Fi 6E, you've got the rebindable button that may or may not offer a functional safe boot if it does, that's super cool. If it doesn't, well, that just puts it in the same situation as every other AMD motherboard that tries to have a safe boot button. So I really like the carbon. It is kind of expensive, right? Like it is just under $500, so it's not a cheap board, but it does do like basically everything, right? Like I don't really know what else I would specifically want from a motherboard. At $500, like maybe 10 gig LAN would be like maybe 10 gig LAN instead of the dual X8, but personally I'd rather have the dual X8 on the PCIe slots. You get a postcode. VRM will power any CPU that you can stick into the socket. Yeah, I like the carbon. It's a interesting combination of features that you won't necessarily find on. Like you can get other boards that at the same price point that have like a different feature set, not necessarily a better one, because depending on what you're doing, you might really want 10 gig LAN or something. Which I'm not even sure that there's a board at $500 that has 10 gig LAN, but I feel like there should be. And you could also just get like this and use your, very convenient PCIe slot layout to just add 10 gig LAN to your system. Oh, this PCIe slot layout also does the thing where your second slot from the CPU is in not that great a position, but oh well. Yeah, so the carbon I think is sort of like if you're going to be spending $500 on an MSI board, or like 500 or more, I'd probably just go for the carbon, because like the Ace, I feel like you really need to know what it like you have to in my opinion you need a specific reason to get the Ace instead of just getting the carbon. The 10 gig LAN could be that reason, right? But the VRM isn't. Like, it just isn't. The 7950X will run on... Actually, it'll probably run on that B650 board just fine, but it'll definitely run on this just fine. So, yeah. Um, so I really, yeah, like my favorite motherboard in MSI's X7, like AM5 lineup is definitely the Carbon, just because like to me it has like the right mix of features that I want on a motherboard. Um, and like it's not completely out there in terms of pricing. Like it's still an expensive board at $500, right? Like it's $500 is a lot for a motherboard, but um I feel like the like my go-to motherboard for like Z690 for MSI was the Unify X, which off the top of my head was also $500 or like 450, right? So um yeah, like it's a kind of a funny thing, but they're generally, yeah, like as with modern motherboards, basically it's around $500 where you sort of get the motherboard that does everything, and then above that you get the motherboards that do like extra stuff that adds a bunch of cost and may or may not be useful depending on what you want. Um, so yeah, but MSI's B650 boards are kind of disappointing, except for the ITX, and the ITX gets a pass because it's the cheapest ITX, not because it's the best. It almost certainly isn't the best, but it is definitely the cheapest, and that or might like it's the cheapest non-BioStar ITX. Again, I've not checked if BioStar has an ITX option, but even if they did, I'm not sure that I would go for that instead of an MSI board. Um, so yeah, like cheapest non-BioStar like option for ITX, like that counts for something, right? Like not everybody wants a high-end ITX build, so that makes that board interesting. Um, and then MSI has like their X670 boards, which are nice. And then the B650 boards are kind of not really a fan. So yeah, that's my thoughts on MSI's AM5 lineup. Carbon is really cool. But if you don't like it, yeah, the Carbon's my favorite because like postcode, PCIe slots, SATA port, like it everything, right? Um, and then you have like steadily sillier and sillier motherboards like the Ace and the Godlike. And yeah, okay, so I'll just end the video at this point. So that's it. Thank you for watching. Like, share, subscribe, leave any comments, questions, suggestions down in the comment section below. If you'd like to support what I do here with actually hardcore overclocking, I have a Patreon. There's a link to that down in the description below. There's also the AHOC Teespring store where you can pick up shirts, hoodies, posters, you know, the usual YouTuber merch. And I've also got a Bandcamp. If for some reason you want to listen to industrial noise, there's a link to that down in the description below as well. And that's it for the video, so thank you for watching, and goodbye.